By far the biggest mistake I see 99% of men making when it comes to overcoming pornography, masturbation, lust, all those things, is by trying to tackle it head on. And the problem here is they don't have the requisite virtue built up to actually do it properly. They're not addressing other areas of their lives which they lack the required virtue to actually conquer this for good and to be liberated. And so the biggest thing that most men need to address is their relationship with sloth, gluttony, and then lastly, lust. You see, sloth is a spiritual sluggishness. It's almost like a spiritual apathy, an inability to do things that are spiritually arduous. In other words, it's an inability to actually have a rigid and structured prayer life. And gluttony isn't just the inordinate desire toward pleasure through food and drink. It's also the overconsumption of media, social media, all of that stuff. And so most men, they fail to address these two things, trying to attack lust head on, and they wonder why they feel like they're white knuckling it, and they often fail. I see this with almost every guy that comes through my coaching program. They've completely ignored these other areas of their lives, and they're trying to just white knuckle this lust issue. And that cannot be the case. It's not just with guys in my coaching program. It's friends, it's people that I've engaged with online. It's also part of the many conversations I've had with exorcists, priests, men that work beside exorcists, most notably Dr. Dan Schneider. It's that the first order of attack is sloth, is that spiritual apathy. And once a man gets that under control, and once he gets his appetites under control, finally he's built up the requisite virtue, obviously layered this upon a sacramental life where one is pursuing confession, the Holy Eucharist, all that. Now he has a fighting chance. And I've quoted this C.S. Lewis quote many times before, but a man's head must rule his belly through his chest. So in this case, the head is the intellect and reason, the belly is obviously the appetites, and the chest is magnanimity, your sentiments. It's kind of what moves your appetites towards these good things. And most men, as St. Paul says in the Bible, their bellies are their gods. And this is the most unrecognized, or what I should say, most often ignored piece of the whole lust battle, which is a plague. It's really the thorn in the side of so many men, including women too, but it's especially a plague against men. It's been weaponized against men. So the solution, although it's simple, in actual, practical application, is actually can be quite difficult. But what I noticed of the men, they become sort of instantly liberated or broken free from this, is they understand this relationship between sloth, gluttony, and lust. And I've spoken about it many, many times before, but it's worth repeating because if you're anything like me, most guys are a little retarded and we need things repeated. So if you're more slothful, the less you pray, the more likely you're going to be gluttonous, the more likely you are to overeat. And thus, the more likely you are to be slothful and gluttonous, the more likely you are to be lustful. So you have no custody of the mind, no custody of the senses, and then it leads you to engaging in things that are obviously deleterious for your soul. So the first plan of attack is addressing your prayer life. What structure do you have in your prayer life? What I notice with most of these guys is, I pray a rosary now and again. I sometimes do some mental prayer. They'll do sort of random prayers throughout the day, but there's no regiment, there's no discipline. This is why I think the Angelus is such a transformative prayer, because it forces you to wake up at 6 a.m., do it at 12 p.m., and do it at 6 p.m. That gives structure right there and then. Reading the daily readings, praying a rosary at the similar time every day, doing a morning offering. Like, what is the first fruits of your day? If you're not giving those first fruits to God, your phone is your God. If that's the first thing you grab upon waking, that is your God. That is your priest. That is what's forming your soul, and you're flooding your mind with dopamine as soon as you wake up. So firstly, address your prayer life. And that, if you can get that under control and you're praying 30 to 45 minutes a day, set times, set prayers every single day, that's where grace really flows into these other areas of our lives. So that's number one, is addressing the prayer life. Number two is addressing gluttony. So that's why a fitness routine and sound nutrition practice is essential. This is not because we're trying to build ourselves up into pagan heathens that worship our body like the Adonis cult. That's not what we're trying to do at all. But it is the restraining of the appetite through fasting, through tracking your macros, eating just what you need to sort of maintain or lose weight. Oftentimes, many of the men that come through the program are overweight. And so once we get them on a roll of losing 10, 15, 20, 30 pounds and get them lifting weights, what this does is it's not just a vainglorious pursuit. Again, it is the subduing and the subordinating of those lower appetites to intellect and right reason. Start lifting weights. Start building testosterone. Start building that virtue of mortification that comes with fitness. And that's why it's a powerful vehicle of self-improvement. And it's often the most low-hanging fruit. It's something that most men can do, unless a guy's super injury prone. But even then, he can still do something physical. And the goal here isn't to get jacked for the sake of getting jacked or what have you, or a six-pack for the sake of getting a six-pack. It is precisely for the spiritual goods, which is the restraining of the appetite. And then moreover, once a man can hone in his nutrition, he's fasting on a semi-regular basis according to his state in life and his health status, of course. But he's also understanding, hey, I can't be overeating. I can't be overly snacking. I can't just be going toward food that just lights up my dopamine receptors. I'm eating single ingredient, wholesome food, a nutritious diet that nourishes the body. Yeah, taste is important, but taste is a secondary thing. And so this lustful appetite is a product of putting second things first and first things second. Food is primarily meant to, nourish our bodies, fuel us, keep us healthy. And then secondarily, there is obviously this pleasure element, but most guys put pleasure above actual function. And this is why their bellies roll their heads instead of vice versa. And the other thing is dopamine. Once a man trains and eats well and gets his prayer life under control, there is less of a need for dopamine. And the food a man indulges in is very important in this battle against lust too, because if you're used to just eating and drinking whatever, you're basically used to finding dopamine where it's cheap and it's easy. So there's no coincidence as to why lust becomes such a problem. Because when you build these dopaminergic pathways in the brain, you're going to seek it in all areas. You're going to seek it on your phone. You're going to seek it through entertainment. You're going to seek it through food. And then thus, you're going to seek it through one of the most lowermost appetites is your sex drive. That is the solution. Now, it's easier said than done. But men, stop looking at lust as just a lust issue. It's usually a combination of several issues. And the most successful men that come through my program have tackled the spiritual life, prayer life piece head on with rigid discipline, praying like a monk. And number two, attacking their nutrition and their training. Once they get these things under control, they find lust breaks. Dr. Dan Schneider has said that in session, he's seen many people, many of which are also seminarians and regular lay people that have these profound lust addictions, alcohol addictions, etc. But once they get them on a regimented prayer routine, once they get them actually moving their bodies and being healthy, these things break and they're liberated within 3 months. So, my brother in Christ, are you preventing your own liberation through your laziness, through your sloth, through your gluttony? And this is probably not an angle that you've looked at this from, but I hope this has provided that kind of value for you, that you go out, you implement these things, and you finally break free, because a world free from lust is a world that's going to be poured over through grace. Now, if you're a man that's looking to break this habit, you don't know how to do it on your own, or you do not want to do it on your own, this is precisely what I do. I have a coaching program that I mentor men through developing rigidity and structure in their prayer life, of course, their fitness and nutrition, and thus breaking lust. And by the grace of God, I've got a great track record. So this is you. I'll leave my application in the description below. I want to help you break it. That's it. Otherwise, like, comment, subscribe, share this with a brother who needs to hear it. And I'll catch you on the other side. Deus Volt.